Welcome back to Your Mic. My name is Freddie Cruz, founder of Speke Podcasting, and today I want you to imagine 7 years, dozens of interviews, and a love letter to podcasting. That's the journey you and I are going on right now. It's the journey behind the documentary Age of Audio. Producer and director Shaun Michael Colon spent nearly a decade weaving together history, personalities, and real-time drama, catching the moments that shaped our industry and telling the true story of struggle, change, and triumph. Now podcast makers and fans alike get to experience it next month. We're screening Age of Audio for VIPs at Speke Fest, happening at the National Museum of Funeral History. Get your tickets now. SpekePodcasting.com/SpekeFest 2025. Shaun, walk me through the exact moment you decided, I need to make a podcast documentary.
Well, it's actually a pretty funny story. I was working on a different documentary, and we were following a band, and they were playing in Brooklyn. At the same time, one of my favorite bands, a band called Propaganda, was playing as well. And a friend of ours was opening up for them and said, "Hey, I know you guys are filming. Would you want to come to the show? We're open. I'll get you in and film our opening set." I was like, yeah, that sounds great. That would be perfect. I'll get to see my favorite band, film my friend's band. That'd be cool. And on the way there, he texted me. He's like, "Hey, dude, my uncle's going to be at the show." I was like, "Oh, cool. Get to meet your uncle." He's like, "My uncle's Ira Glass."
Kind of a big deal.
I was like, "What?" So I ended up hanging out with Ira at this show, and we hung out, not just kind of like met him, but we hung out and chatted, and he's asked us about the movie we were making, and it was really and then he came to the band that we were following show afterwards, and he kind of hung out all evening.
You were hanging out, it was more than just a chat or something like that?
Basically, he hung out all evening, and I got to meet him, and that was a combining of two worlds I never thought would mix. And a little bit later, like a few days later, I was interviewing Dallas Taylor from the podcast 20,000 Hertz, because he had done an episode that was related to some of the things that this band we were filming with do. And when I was talking to him, I was like, after our interview, I was like, "Dude, I met Ira Glass. This is crazy. Hung out with Ira Glass. It was interesting." And at that point, I had, let me just back this up a little bit and say that this is my second documentary. I had done a punk rock documentary. It was my first documentary, called A Fat Wreck. And one of the things I did is I realized that Roman Mars was a punk rock fan, so I sent him a copy of the film early on, and he gave me some really great feedback and, said some very nice things. And I actually used some of those on the pull quote on the DVD. Like Roman Mars, had this quote about the film. And Dallas Taylor knew Roman as well. And he was like, "Dude, Roman Mars, and now Ira Glass." He's like, "Why aren't you making a podcast documentary?" And I was like, "Why did you say that?" Why did you have to say that? Because now I have to try and do that.
How likely do you think it would have been for you to get Age of Audio into the world if the pandemic didn't happen, seeing as how you're putting it out after 7 years of producing it?
I think it would have come out faster, but I think it would have got a lot less relevant faster, to be honest with you.
True.
Because if we would have hit the questions we were asking about at that time, were like, what are you going to do with all this money rushing in? And narrative audio is so big. And oh my gosh, Gimlet's so huge. And what's going to happen with Reply All? And, all these things. And one of the benefits of that elongated time period is that we got to ride the wave back down. And also, I don't think we would have run into Ronald Young Jr. and had the same. We had some other subjects that were part of the film, and then kind of either dropped out or kind of things changed with everybody. And I don't know if those narratives would have been as strong as Ronald's, and would have been as having a strong up and down as far as we get with Ronald, and as far as kind of some of the highs and lows, and wouldn't have been there for really some big moments with Ronald. I think we were kind of really lucky to capture I should say that the film we follow, our main subject is Ronald Young Jr. He's this podcaster, independent podcaster that has this great podcast called Wait For It that got a lot of acclaim. He has a couple other podcasts that he does. He's really kind of a podcast personality at this point, does a lot of talks at conferences. And we caught him just as he was kind of hitting this ascension and having a lot of big things happen to him. And we were able to kind of be there in the moment. And I think it gives the film some of that fly on the wall aspect of being there and some, dynamics where a lot of the film would have just been talking heads and people talking about things that happened in the past. And with Ronald, I think you kind of capture a moment that's actually happening and at that point, real time. And we got the benefit of kind of having, I don't want to spoil anything. I think we spoil it in the trailer anyway, but he wins a bunch of awards and we were there and we didn't know what that was going to go. So we were kind of there in the moment, and that gives it I from the very beginning of making the film, I knew I wanted to have someone that you could relate to and someone you could connect with rather than it just being a bunch of people saying what's happened in podcasting, which is an aspect of, we wanted to kind of tell like a little bit of the history and give some context to where podcasting started, kind of where it was going at a certain point and kind of where it's kind of landing. So I'm grateful. I think every film follows a natural curve. The film is what it wants to be. Yeah. And has its own life, and really, I am grateful because I think the film is better for the fact that it ended up being 7 years. I probably want to run into Ellen Horn, who was a big help in the film. She was a producer. She's was one of the co-creators of Radiolab, and she teaches audio storytelling, a big program at NYU, and really helped. She was our story editor as well, and she really helped craft the film into something that I think has a structure that is easily relatable, and it was very helpful, and she was an amazing collaborator. And I just wouldn't have had that. I don't know if I would have had that experience working with her as well. So it's really, the film, it just happens how it has to happen, I guess. And I think it would have been a lesser film had it not extended to where it was.
Well, and I got to tell you, Shaun, and thank you for sending me the link to watch the entire documentary. What I really enjoyed about it was, just like you said, there is the narrative story of Ronald and literally documenting his progress, which, it's a documentary, but also providing that historical context. You got your Ira Glasses, you got Adam Curry, and then you've got Kevin Smith. You got this whole cast of characters and the people who really did shape the industry from the beginning. And then you're weaving in Ronald's storyline just flawlessly. And I want to go back, if you don't mind. How did you get somebody like Kevin Smith to be a part of the documentary?
Well, sheer tenacity.
Was it a lot of DMing and emailing?
No, I mean, there was that aspect after he agreed to do it. We were doing some filming in Los Angeles right around the same time he was doing a lot of the Fat Man Beyond, Fat Man on Batman, I think might have been at the time. And they would do live podcasting at the Scum and Villainy Cantina in Los Angeles. And part of what they do, part of the live show, is people would bring things up for him to sign. And a lot of times they would comment on what is brought up to them. So what I did is I was like, okay, maybe I can ask him, because maybe I can ask him to be in the documentary. Part of my research, I know that he had talked about one of the first advertisers being a certain company.
It shall remain nameless?
Yeah, if you watch the movie, it's not nameless.
That's right. We're trying to not spoil anything.
Anyway, he talked about one of the first advertisers who dealt with basically a intimate tool. And I thought it was really funny that was kind of, not the first advertiser, but one of the first advertisers to work with a network, before those things were kind of established. As, the advertising now is kind of an established thing with podcasting. But in those early days, 2005, 2006, those things were still kind of really being established. So I thought it was a really good, funny story. And I also thought it'd be really funny to have, the like Ira Glass, NPR, kind of a lot more, and he's not as uptight about that stuff either. But having those two kind of things, I thought would be funny to have in the film. So I took my first film, I put a note on it and put it on the counter as we were at the show. And when it came, through the show, I see him kind of clock it a few times, or I see him look at it, and he's like, I could see he acknowledged it. And when it came to the time of the show where they usually do all the signing, they go, "Oh, we're going to do something a little different today." And they brought in the head writers of Endgame, the Marvel Endgame, the Marcus and McCreary, and switched off. And basically, Kevin was asking them questions, so they didn't really do the signing things. I was like, "Oh no, we missed our chance. We missed it." It's like bittersweet, because I was like, "Oh, this is great. I'm a big Marvel fan," so I was like, "Oh, great, the writers are here. That's great."
Yeah.
At the end of the show, rather than going, and at this time, he had signed people's stuff during the show, so everyone had grabbed all their stuff off, and the only thing left with the counter was the DVD of our previous film with the note on it. And instead of going back to behind the counter, they just left at the end of the show, and it was left there. And I was like, "Oh man!" And I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna run out to the back of the club. I know they hang out back there, and see if I can." I know he clocked it. Maybe can talk to him in a second. So I run back there, and they're all kind of huddled in a corner in a circle, talking, the people at the show and the owner of the bar. And so I just kind of do that thing. We kind of walk up and act like you belong. I wasn't going to be like, "Hey, Kevin." I was just going to walk up and just kind of chill out for a second, and just kind of. And as soon as I got close, the owner was like, "Hey, man, this is private, dude." I was like, okay, cool. I got you. So I go around the corner, and my cinematographer, Joel Herrera, who was with me, he was talking to Marcus and McCreary about, just Marvel stuff, I'm sure. And he sees me, he's like, "Dude, he forgot the DVD." And so I go up and I grab it, and I was like, "I'm going to try one more time, right? I'm going to give it one more go. I know he saw this, so I'm going to go back there." And I go back, and I turn the corner, and everyone had dispersed. No one's back there. And there was this black SUV pulling out, and it stops, window rolls down, and Kevin Smith goes, "Hey, man, is that supposed to be for me?"
Oh, you can't make this stuff up, bro. This is like something. This is literally something out of Hollywood, with like the ebbs and the flows and the peaks and the valleys. You get turned down, you get rejected. You're like, "Oh, one more time." You go back, it's gone. Like everyone's dispersed. There's no one there. You leave, you're disgruntled. You're like demotivated. What now? And then it's out of a movie, it seems.
So like then Barry. You say. No, I just said, "Hey," I said, "Yeah, man, this is my first movie. You should check it out." But also, I'm working on this other documentary. It's about the podcast industry. It's got Ira Glass, Roman Mars, these kind of people. And I wanted to talk to you, if you are interested in being in the film, to talk to you about, one of your first advertisers for Smodcast. And he said, "Yeah, man, I'm into it. Get in touch with my people, and we'll make it happen."
I want to know, because it would be really easy to just assume or presume that it was whatever, get out of here, I'm going to go party type of a yes. But like, how long after the initial, "I want to be a part of it," did it take for you to get him?
It took a year.
And so did you at any point feel like, wow, did he just tell me yes for the heck of it? Or
I have this philosophy that if someone tells you yes, it's so easy to say no. it's so easy to say no.
True.
You can say, "Oh, I don't know if I'm going to have a lot of time for that." I mean, I get no's all the time. No's are easy.
Mm.
And, if he would have said no, I probably would have dropped it at that point. Maybe. Um, but since he was like, "Yes, I'll do that," to me, like, that means he had at some point an intention of doing it. And unless I get a thing that says, we're no longer interested, that kind of thing, to me, that's a matter of, trying to figure out a way to make it work with his schedule, because he's giving his time for free. He's, it's that kind of thing. And he's a busy dude. He's got a lot of stuff going on. So, I just kept trying to make it happen. And then what we did is he was coming here to Dallas. I live in Dallas. And he was coming on one of his tours, where he did I think he was showing Jay and Silent Bob not Strike Back, the reboot film. And then he used a Q&A, and he was doing it at the Texas Theater here in Dallas. And I'm really good friends with the people who run the theater. They're a big part of the film community up here. And I kind of reached out to them and said, "Hey, if I could make this happen, can I film there?" And they're like, "Of course." And so I reached out to his people and was basically like, "Hey, if he can give us 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes while he's here, we'll do it at the theater. I've already talked to the people at the theater. They said if he's okay with it, we'll film there. That way it's as easy as possible." And that's where we filmed it. If you see, there's like a little moviola projector thing in the background. It's at the Texas Theater there that we filmed that. And it did happen. And I really appreciative, because that day he did 2 screenings, and then, he does about an hour long or more Q&A. And so, they get there at noon, they set up, he shows the film, he does a thing before the film, he shows the film, he gets about maybe, the length of the film to chill out, and then he has to go and do a Q&A for an hour and then start it over again, and he was doing it after he had done the first screening, done all the Q&A, and had, a little bit of time before the next screening started. So he really gave us, the little hour he had to relax, he gave us 30 minutes of that. So and then he went on to do another, like, introduce the movie, show the movie, do a hour and a half long Q&A, and then met with all the VIP people. I say that, I mean, they're the people who paid for the VIP thing, and met with them for we stayed there all night, and I don't think they got out of there till 2 or 3 in the morning, because he talked to everybody. And that guy is a really hard worker. That guy is like a punk rock kind of guy. I don't know if he's punk rock he actually listened to punk rock, but he is, doing the road show and doing his thing. And he giving us that time was very, very appreciative that he did that. So, yeah, it was, but it's also a matter of, like I said, that tenacity. It's like, well, how can we make this work? How can we make this work? I think that not just I think with anything in life, I think you have to have that kind of tenacity, especially if you're doing things that are kind of off the beaten path and trying to make a film or trying to start a business or trying to start a podcast or doing all those things. You have to be willing to take a lot of rejection.
Yeah.
And get back up and keep trying and trying. I mean, I will be honest, this film has been very challenging. it's definitely challenging. My first film, it was very hard, but it seemed to, or at least, I don't know, maybe it's like childbirth. You don't remember how hard it was. I mean, not that I have a child or anything, but they say that with women, that they can't remember how hard the childbirth is because it's so challenging that you just forget how hard it was. But yeah, this movie was really, really challenging. I mean, in the beginning, it really felt like it wanted to be made with things like that happening, telling that story, which is a great story, but then there's making all those things happen afterwards. So it's a lot of kismet, a lot of luck, and then really pushing, wading through a lot of challenging situations.
Talk about a time that you felt as though maybe this isn't meant to happen, or you talk about 7 years between ideation and then putting it out into the world. Here we are, 2025. You're nominated at a festival, and you're touring the state. You're at events like Podcast Movement. You're going to be at Speke Fest. You're going to be screening for our VIPs. So talk about one or maybe even two of the times when you were just like, man, is the world against me?
So many times, just even right now. That's I mean, even right now. I mean, I'm very lucky to have screened at Podcast Movement, but getting that set up was really a challenge, and it really was. Justin from Transistor FM really stepped up and really helped make sure that happened. Financially speaking, I'm grateful to Dan and also Brian at and Tom at Sounds Profitable. They donated the space, but getting the equipment costs covered, that was really a challenge in its own right. And even now, trying to get, we did do the festival, which is amazing, the film festival that we premiered at, but we've had a lot of rejection from a lot of other film festivals. And so even right now, there are times where I feel that way as I'm trying to get the film out into the world. It's, it's really challenging. I mean, as anyone who makes a podcast knows, there's so much vying for our attention and everyone's doing so much. It's not even that people aren't interested. It's just that trying to keep that on people's radar and trying to get those things. So there's been some times even since the film's been done where I've felt that way. But really, the big one was in 2023. I had some major financial setbacks, and which required me to really not stop doing the movie, but I had to be working on other things full time just to pay bills. I had a steep drop in my income hit due to some outside forces. And I had to just really increase the amount of hours that I was working on just to pay the bills, and ate up almost any time I had for working on the film at all. And there was a point where I was talking to Dallas Taylor. I've met up with him many times, and kind of he's been a big cheerleader of the film, and also very encouraging, but also someone I could talk to when things were tough. And he said at one point to me, he was like, you don't have to do the movie. You're not it's not like, I mean, it would suck to not finish it, but if it's causing you stress, you don't have to do these things, And with the financial hurdles and it felt like I had a subject drop out of the film, and it really just felt like it had been dead in the water. It felt like no movement was happening. And I was like, and with these things, momentum it plays a lot, in my experience anyway. Momentum plays a lot into a film getting finished, and you need that momentum, things happening and going, because once it if it falters, it could just die. There's so many. Every movie's a miracle, and because there's so many things preventing it from happening. And in 2023, I really felt like that. And I remember, I was in my car, and I remember being at a light, and I didn't sit there for 15 minutes, but I remember I can just picture myself where I was, and I remember thinking to myself, what does it look like if I stop? And what are those emails that go out? What is it? And, at that point we had, people had given us money, all these people had given us their stories and things like that. And I thought about it for about 15 minutes, what that would look like. And there's another part of me that was like, F that. We're going to finish the movie. I mean, come hell or high water, we're going to figure out a way to finish it. And at that point I had a few ideas. I wanted to do a little crowdfunding thing, which I had a lot of success in my first film with the crowdfunding thing. And I also I had Amy Grumbling, who had been working with me as another editor. I had been paying her out of my own pocket to help with the film. And I was like, hey, what if we this that actually happened a little earlier. I was like, what if we pivot? Rather than you edit, let me pay you the same money to help me write the grant. Because we should try maybe get some grants or some grant opportunities. What kind of people, review grants? It's usually people who probably like podcasts and probably know who Ira Glass is. So maybe we can sneak in somehow. And Amy, luckily, had been working for the Gotham. I didn't know this till I asked her to do the grant writing, but she'd been working for the Gotham reviewing grants for the last year. So she had a good idea of what they look for and could help. And we had conversations for the previous year about what the film was and things like that. So she really knew and had notes about how we could take that information and put it into there's a grant, like a, can't remember what it's called right now, but it's basically a thing you fill out and if you fill this out, you can take that information and apply it to all grants. So you fill out this one big one, and then you can then take that information and then apply it to whatever grants so you write one big one, and then as you're doing other grants, you just kind of conform it. And she had done that for me, and we worked together on that, and we'd submitted to a couple grants, and with grants, you submit and forget, because no one gets grants. No one gets grants. You never get grants. That's just the way it is. And so I had been in that situation where I was just working and the movie wasn't doing anything, and I was like, had thought about quitting, and I was like, not going to do that. I was like, what other grants are coming up? Let's see. And so I reached out to Amy, and I was like, I'll submit the grant, but which ones should I be looking out for? And she was like, well, there's this Austin Film Society grant that I think you're probably really, most of the grants that are available, this is one to be the most likely to shoot for. Mm-hmm. And so literally I looked it up, and there was 2 weeks left before the the submission date. And so I stayed up basically every night for like 2 weeks getting the grant stuff together and repurposing it and rewriting and getting it together. And literally, if you go on our Instagram for the film, you can see it. I submitted 5 minutes before the cutoff.
Oh, man.
But it failed.
No.
And I had to go back and change the thing. So when I submitted it, the email I got was at 6 o'clock on the dot.
Oh, man.
I submitted it, Indiana Jones style, pulling out the hat, like, submitted it just when it and it was very stressful. And I was just like, there's just no way we're going to get the grant, but I would have felt like we would miss the opportunity if we didn't try. And so I really just put that aside and didn't think about it, because it was going to be like 3 or 4 months till we even found out if we got the grant. So I just didn't even think about it, and started really kind of gearing things up for what I wanted to do, which is the crowdfunding thing, see if I could get some attention toward the film, maybe raise a few funds to keep things moving. And September, I come home, and I mean, I swear to you, I had just really forgotten about it. Not like forgotten about it completely, but just like it wasn't on my mind. I had just assumed. And, I remember coming home and seeing an email from the Austin Film Society. And when you see that, you're like, okay, well, I didn't get this, And the first line is, "We are excited." And I just literally didn't even read the rest of the email. I really kind of just dropped. In all honesty, I dropped to my knees and just wailed. I was so tired. I cried. I mean, like, not even like sad or happy. It's just like trying to, like, all this, like, kind of what you were asking before. Like, was there any moments where, like, does anyone even want this? Is this worth doing? Or, it's that kind of question, which has popped up a few times. But at that moment, I felt like, okay, like, there's some validation there. Yeah. I think there was 145 films that vied for that grant. So out of 145 films, I think it's a they give it to not just one. They do it's a group of people. But I was in that group, and that really kind of revived the film in a lot of ways. It was that was the moment where I was like, okay, well, there's something here. They're going to back it and give us, it's like not a tremendous amount of money, but $10,000, which allowed me to get a new computer. It allowed me to go. I reached out to Resonate, Chioki at Resonate podcast conference, and because it seemed like a good place to kind of start drumming up interest in the film. And that's where I met Ellen. That's where I ended up running into Ron, and really that was the thing that reignited the film. At that point, things, the momentum started again. So yeah, that's. I mean, I hate to say never give up, maybe giving up is great. There's something to be said about giving up.
Yeah. Well, giving up is not for everybody. And when you have pockets of validation, even though the results don't match the effort, in your case, you're pouring your blood, sweat, and tears into all this, and you're having to, you're taking on jobs that to pay your bills, and you're literally not able to spend your spare time on the thing that you really want to work on. So getting the grant, to me at least, seems like that was the validation you needed to keep it going, not just monetarily, but also that internal validation. I could really relate to that, Shaun, because when you get a win after you get punched in the gonads so many times, it really gets to you. Really, I don't know about you, but man, you start to question your life choices, your existence. It's like, okay, what am I meant to be here for?
I mean, it's one of those things where, I'm 45. I just turned 45. 7 years is a significant chunk of time.
It's almost
And
a
you
decade, brother.
you only get so much time. And there's definitely been several times that I've thought about that and thought about why did I do this? And I think I would say that most filmmakers, and like I said, not just filmmakers, but anyone who really, puts their passion and effort into something that's they talk about, betting on yourself, right? You should bet on yourself.
Yes.
Bet on yourself. But the key word in there is bet. Within a bet means you can lose.
Right.
And that's the part that I feel like gets, when you take a risk, you're like, oh, they took a risk. I think of the stories of, like Pedro Pascal. He tells the story of he was on his last $100 and he was about to head back home and give up on acting because he'd been trying it for so long, and he was, and then he got like a thing on a TV show that gave him some income and really kind of like that. And so he didn't go home, and he's here now. And like, yeah, but for every one Pedro Pascal, there are thousands of people that did not get that thing at the last minute.
That blew that last $100.
Yeah, and that went home. And we don't hear about them because that's not a story to tell. Right. I think about that a lot. When people, I hear they tell the stories because they're so encouraging, and you're like, what about the guy that didn't get the phone call?
Yeah, we don't hear those stories. What you were just describing, man, reminds me of and I forget the guy's name, but the founder of FedEx and how he was having trouble paying the FedEx bills. You know where I'm going, right? I think
I thought about this one too.
Like a couple dozen, like maybe $20,000 or $30,000. Y'all Google the story for the exact
it's
numbers.
bonkers. It's bonkers.
He couldn't pay to fill up his planes with gas. And so he took the last, I think it was like $20,000 or $30,000, went to Vegas and bet it all on blackjack, I believe, and won. But
right, you do hear about this. You do hear about this story, but you hear about it as this guy who embezzled and lost it at the game and lost the company. Like it's just like there's all these moments in life where it's like there's so much out of our control. The one thing I can say is I think there's a podcast episode with Seth Rogen talking about this, and he's like, what's the one common, ask what's the one common denominator between everyone you've met who's successful? He's like, they didn't give up. He's like, if you give up, you definitely won't make it.
Yep.
If you don't give up, you might make it. But if you give up, you definitely won't.
It's definitely a failure. Yeah.
That's like there is like, and if you keep, and there's something to be said, about keeping and trying, and, but there are costs to trying, there are costs with relationships and time you lose and financial things. And, I think I was telling someone about this, and they're like, "Yeah, but you're following your passion." And I was like, "You can't retire on passion."
Amen to that, dude.
And I hope it's not coming off as discouraging.
No, it's not. No, it's
Like
not. But I mean, these are real insights from somebody who a new or an aspiring podcaster or even a creator or a business owner that is interested in podcasting really needs to hear, because we hear in your documentary, going to your work, we hear the story of Ronald, and we see Ira Glass, and we see Kevin Smith, and what we don't see in this hour and 22-minute long documentary is, every failure, every rejection, every, email or letter or phone call or text message that was blown off that led to that. And we don't see all the rejection, all the indifference that led that you had to endure as a producer and director to get to the finished product. And so there's an entrepreneur, and you say you're 45. I'm 50. And so there's this guy named Alex Hormozy. He's in his mid 30s, worth, I think, over $500 million. And he's wise beyond his years. And I love listening to the guy. He talks about the Rocky cut scene. And he says, in theaters, the Rocky cut scene is only 2 minutes. But in real life, it could be years. Years. And nobody's cheering for you when you're, when and it's not a knock on anyone's circle. They just don't see it, so they can't cheer for you.
No, and we tend to not. I would think, as most creators, most people, and it's changed a little bit, I think, with social media. But I think most people tend to only show you the wins.
Yeah.
And I'm probably guilty of that myself. I'm not always showing the rejections. I'm not showing the rejection. All the festivals we were rejected from. I'm not posting about those. And so we're not really showing those things, and we're showing the side that's hard. You're seeing people see this curated side of what we're doing, and they see. I was reminded of I think Kevin Smith. I was listening to his podcast, and he was talking to J.J. Abrams, because you always think that someone above you is doing all these things. And Kevin was like, because Kevin Smith, I was listening. He's like, oh, I can't get how many times things have been not worked out, all these shows that I've tried or pitched, and I can get so tired of pitching and pitching and pitching. And he's talking to J.J. Abrams. He's like, man, I just can't wait to. I mean, it'd be so great to have it like you with all these And J.J. was like, do you know how many? You're seeing all the wins. You know how much stuff we've worked on that didn't make it, was rejected, and I think that's important to know. And that's the thing about doing it. I think people like us, the people who do things, you do it anyway. There is that rejection, and there's that thing where you're just like, I mean, I said it I would say, if you haven't crawled up in a ball in a fetal position crying at least twice, you're not making a documentary.
Touche, man.
I mean, it's really challenging, and I'll tell you, to say something positive, we showed the film at Podcast Movement, and I wish more people would have been there, but it was a nice little crowd. And the people who were there, they stayed there, and we had almost 45-minute Q&A afterwards, where people were asking a lot of questions about the film, really super engaged and really loved the film, and I was really excited about that. And more than one person was like, thank you so much for making this. And I think that was an acknowledgement of an understanding of what it takes to do this, and the fact that someone, not just me, but other people who do this kind of things, that they are putting in the effort and the time and making those sacrifices, because it's not a monetary, a thing for monetary gain for the most part for these types of documentaries, these types of things. And I think it bears it out in the film itself. I think whenever you make a film, you always make a film about yourself, even if it's not directly about yourself. And the film really lands in a place where art is worth making for art's sake. It doesn't always have to have a monetary, the goal that shouldn't necessarily be monetary. It shouldn't necessarily be for acclaim or those kind of things. Sometimes it's important to make art for art's sake. And I mean, I feel that it's tough to, when you're living it, you're like, oh gosh, it can be really tough when you're living through it and having to deal with the juggling of finances and, you know, you know, you know, we were able to raise a lot of money through sponsors and things like that. But there's been many times where I've just had to like pay for stuff myself, flyers and things when I really don't have a lot of money, disposable income to be spending on it, but it needs to happen, for these things to keep moving forward. And you make the choice. You're like, well, either I do it and this doesn't happen, or, and all the work we put in, it's tough, but it's also rewarding when people see it and they can see. I have this theory that no effort is wasted. You just don't control where the results of that effort can go all the time.
Yeah.
So, and it's also a thing that human beings have this. We can sense effort in things. I think so. When you see a gymnast who's really good at what they do, it's not just that you see what they're doing is impressive. Like we have a sense for how much effort went into getting to the point where they could do that. Mm-hmm. Or you see a film that's really good, or you see a musician that's really talented, or a business leader that can really, we have an appreciation for effort. And that's why I think art museums and history museums, and you see a clay pot that was made 3,000 years ago that has intricate stuff on it, and we look at it, and that person that made that, maybe they made it for their friend or a loved one or whatever. They didn't expect it to show up in a museum 3,000 years later, but here we are 3,000 years later appreciating the effort that this human being put into something, and we can sense that effort, and I feel like that's worth doing. So yeah.
Well, Shaun, again, thank you for making the documentary, one, and two, for being such an ardent supporter of every podcast host in the podcast universe, because I told you via text, you articulated my love of podcasting in a way that I could never have imagined articulating. And I like to write and I like to talk. And so I'm just glad that I met you, and that I've met someone who believes in the medium just as much as all of us.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's a love letter to podcast makers. I hope enough of them get to see it.
Love it. Appreciate you joining the podcast, my friend.
All right, thank you.